All right, our good friend John Phillips sent this story over.
Okay.
Which goes into something that we were talking about with Bill Peters earlier.
Right.
About all these royalty payments.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently one of the biggest manager moguls in the music industry, Irving Azoff.
Yeah.
Everybody and their brother knows who Irving Azoff is.
Sure.
He's spearheading a movement where he wants commercial radio to pay up.
Okay.
Saying, you pay up, you give our artists the money that they deserve for supporting your lame asses for decades, or you're not going to play our music.
Okay.
You're not going to get to play the popular stuff that keeps these radio stations afloat.
Right.
So Irving, along with a bunch of very notable musicians, are saying, yeah, radio, you guys don't pay shit.
Okay.
You guys need to pay.
Who's the notable musicians?
Well, let's read the article here.
All right.
John Bon Jovi got his big break in the early 80s after spending an entire day waiting to pester a disc jockey at a radio station on Long Island, New York, to play a demo of a song he had written. The album with that song? Guess this, Chris?
Self-titled?
No.
Bon Jovi?
Nope.
7800 Fahrenheit?
Runaway.
That's on the original one.
Yeah.
I thought you said which album was it on.
Well, that's what the article says. The album with that song, Runaway.
Oh, well, the song is Runaway. The album isn't called Runaway.
It went on to sell more than 1 million copies. And help fuel the career of one of the most enduring rock acts of the past 4 decades.
Okay.
Now Bon Jovi is again lobbying radio officials, and this time the impact could be far larger. He and about 75 other artists, including such staples of the airwaves, such as Drake, Pharrell Williams, Steve Miller, Bruce Springsteen, have joined super manager Irving Azoff's crusade to press radio station to boost the royalties they pay writers when they play their songs.
Okay.
That figure hasn't budged in decades, and Azoff says artists may pull some of their music off the air if their concerns are not addressed.
Radio's not going to give 2 shits.
Well, that's a good question there. This isn't how the guy in my position... This isn't about the guy in my position, but about my buddies who are very good songwriters who try to make a living just songwriting, says Bon Jovi, whose latest tour grossed more than... What do you think his latest tour grossed, even without Richie Sambora on board?
120 million.
No, not quite that much.
80 million.
A third of that.
A third of that?
A third of 120.
Is that like 35 million?
Yeah, it's 40.
40? All right.
40 million.
That's not a bad summer.
Who will champion them, he asks. There is no charity show for the songwriter. For all the fuss about streaming services, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music, radio is still the lifeblood of the music business. Can you believe that?
No, I don't believe that even for a second.
Yeah, I don't either.
First, what do you think is? I think YouTube is.
Yeah, I think YouTube is probably the major way.
Yeah, nobody's going to the radio to hear a new song. You go to YouTube.
Unless you're talking about, just playing the hits, as it were.
Yeah. And then you go to Pandora or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see what we got here. Hail and kill, caller. You're on the air.
So are you saying that radio doesn't pay any royalties to artists in the US? Is this what you're saying?
They do not, Tim. And if you just hang in there and listen to the rest of the story, you'll find out that radio pays nothing.
They do in Australia.
Well, it's not Australia. The States is much bigger than Australia.
I know, but what happens in Australia is, because I'm a member of APA AMCOS, is if you get played on radio or television in Australia, you get paid. And also what happens is APA AMCOS collects songwriting royalties from radio and from television, and then every year, if you play a live gig, and you play your material at live gigs, you get paid for every song you play at every venue throughout the year. So American radio should pay. Absolutely, I agree with this. Hail and kill.
There goes Tim. Glad he got his 2 cents in there.
Yeah.
So anyway, for all the fuss about streaming services, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, radio is still the lifeblood of the music business. It's the most common way music is listened to in the U.S., where 240 million people tune in every week, and stations generate about $18 billion in radio advertising annually from news, talk, sports, and music.
Yeah, but most of the money that they're generating these days is from talk and sports.
Right.
I mean, other than a classic rock station, the fucking stations are flipping constantly.
Yeah, I agree.
The music stations never last, so they're not generating any money. If they can't keep a station afloat with a style of music, and they have to keep flipping their format, that's a clear indicator that it's not working.
Yeah.
People aren't listening.
Under the industry's confusing business model, radio companies pay about 4% of their music-related advertising revenue to the songwriters.
Of their advertising revenue?
Yeah, 4% of that.
Okay.
So what's 4% of $18 billion?
I don't know. What is it, 18 billion?
Yeah, 4%.
Hey, Siri. What is 4% of 18 billion?
4% times 18 billion is 720 million.
All right.
There's the answer.
So not even a billion.
Yeah. I'm not going to look like a dummy again with math.
Yeah. So basically 750 million.
Yeah.
That's what they're paying to the music industry.
And where's that money going?
Don't know.
That seems like a significant chunk of money.
Yep, it does. Enter Azoff, a former head of the MCA record label and ex-chairman of a concert promoter, Live Nation Entertainment, who's best known as the manager of such mega acts as Bon Jovi, the Eagles, Christina Aguilera. He and industry veteran Randy Grimmett, no relation to Steve Grimmett,
No.
found global music rights, which is demanding that radio stations pay its big-name artists, songwriters, a higher rate, but less than digital and internet radio services pay.
This is going to backfire so fucking bad on them, it isn't even funny.
Yeah. So they're willing to take internet streaming radio money, but when it comes to commercial radio that actually generates money,
Yeah.
they're willing to take less.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but they'll put the fans out of business.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Stations have responded with a lawsuit accusing Azoff of anti-competitive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
He countered-sued, and the litigation is ongoing. The stations don't seem to want to settle, Azoff said, and if the suit doesn't go his way, he may only have one recourse, and that is taking the artist off the radio.
And you know what's going to happen, though. The guy that owns, like, Clear Channel is going to do exactly what we're doing. He's going to sign, it'll be much more sophisticated, but he's going to sign these fucking deals for records to play without any royalty payment. That's just what they're going to do. And they'll just avoid it. They'll have a couple of years that are tough, but they'll invent new stars. I mean, radio, if there are people that are still listening to radio, as this article says, and they hear the same band, look at what we did, and I'm going to use us as a tiniest of tiniest fucking model, but to prove a point. We have how many listeners? 40,000?
Yeah, give or take.
And we have made Red Rain into a band that our listeners know.
That is true.
Now, they are not getting, I mean, they do publicity and they play some shows or whatever. But for the most part, they're not getting any love anywhere but here. Is that fair?
I would say that the majority of the love that they're getting comes from this station and our fans.
Right. And we turned them into something at least here.
Correct.
So now imagine the guy that owns Clear Channel. He can pay, there's how many stations? 1,000 stations or whatever with Clear Channel, right?
Right.
He can pay probably, would you say that half of that $720 million is his?
Yeah, I would say that they probably own the lion's share of commercial radio stations out there, yeah.
So let's say that that's half. Half of 720 would be what, $360 million. Or he can put $360 million in his pocket and find unsigned artists and build them into something. He can literally build them into something, build them into, nationally known bands.
Right.
Under an agreement to not pay them for commercial airplay.
Sure.
Now, a million bands. Don't you think that the bands would do that?
Yeah, to get that exposure, sure.
Even bands that are established. Do you think that like a Dokken, think Don with a new record would do that? Would just say, yeah, I don't give a shit about I'm not going to make any money anyway.
Yeah, we're not getting paid now, so,
So what difference is it? But I can be back on commercial radio.
Correct.
Don would do that in a minute, and I think a lot of bands would do that in a minute. Heritage bands that make their money touring, they will absolutely do that in a minute. If Pearl Jam can't get played on classic rock radio unless they sign an agreement for new music to be played for free, they'll sign that agreement. They'll tell Isaac Azoff to go fuck himself. And they'll sign an agreement behind him. That's what will happen. You want the truth? I hope not Isaac, Irving. I hope Irving Azoff goes through with this, because I would love to see them finally be done with this nonsense. Just finally be done with it. Stop thinking that these fucking bands are owed for a fucking hobby that they chose. They're not. Make your money the way that the industry wants to pay it. That's the way it works in any other industry in the world. Paperclip industry. If people want to buy your paper clips because they're purple, then they will. If they don't, then they won't. Right?
That's correct.
But in the music industry, you're supposed to pay them even if people don't want what they're putting out. If people don't like an album, you're still supposed to pay for it. Did you see the article this week with James Hetfield saying, yeah, load and reload, that was an experiment that failed?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, James, because, me and about 6 million other people bought both of those records. Glad to see that you were willing to fuck your fans in order to, fuck your fans out of $100 million so that you could fuck around with something that you don't even believe in and lie in every interview talking about how good it was for those fucking 3 years or whatever. Thanks a lot, cocksucker.
Nice.
Seriously, that annoyed me to no end, but that's the problem with the music industry. In the music industry, they've figured out a way that everybody thinks that they should be paid. They think that because they went to the trouble of doing the profession that they love, that they're owed something. And no, you're not. You're not owed. If radio was programmed by the customers, then potentially they might have a case that they're owed something. But radio is just throwing it out there, and the customers are the biggest sheep this side of politics.
Right.
That just buy whatever horse shit they're spoon-fed. That's what they're that's what they're paying for. That's what they want to be paid for. The radio industry can go on without the bands.
That is true.
The bands cannot go on without any airplay. How many great bands do we know? And I mean great bands that have never sold 1,000 copies of a record because they couldn't get the right exposure.
Yeah, we've talked about that a million times, that exposure is everything.
Yeah.
And with, with everybody online, be it a YouTube or whatever, it's just like, how do you pinpoint just one of those good bands with all the thousands and thousands of independent bands uploading their music out there?
Yeah. In today, think about it this way. Let's say that Isaac goes with his little theory here.
You mean Irving?
Irving. Why do I keep saying Isaac?
I don't know.
Let's say Irving Azoff gets all of his bands pulled. Okay, now they're not playing them anymore on the radio. What makes the most sense for a band today then? Does it make sense to sign with him, who's fighting this battle, or would it make sense to sign with a major marketing firm to market the shit out of your music, play it for free on commercial radio, but have a company that does nothing but market?
Well, if you're a new band, that's the way to go. If you're an established band, which is obviously who he's representing, it's easy to represent the name, the known name.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, whether you lose the radio battle or not, a Bon Jovi or a Metallica or a Bruce Springsteen, whether they're being played on your local radio station or not, they're still going to sell out arenas.
Sure. But in today's world, you don't need a record label anymore. There's no fucking product. There's so little physical product anymore. You don't need to be signed to a label. You don't need distribution anymore. You need a marketing firm.
Yeah, you got to get your name out there and be known.
You need a marketing firm that has side deals or independent deals worked with YouTube, with Spotify, with Apple Music, with, TV shows. That's what you need today. You don't need a label that will press up fucking 1,000 copies of the new cattle decapitation. You need a marketing agent to put that shit into people's ears.
Sure.
And that's what Irving here is going to do. He's going to create an environment where it's an us against them mentality. And the them is going to win after so many decades of this model not working for the bands. Why in the fuck would the bands go and try and fight it even more? Fight the one thing that has helped them.
Yeah, it's not going to change now. I mean, because as we go further into this article, you're going to find out how long this has been going on.
Yeah, okay, Irving. I know he's a genius and all that, and he's done some amazing things with some artists. Found Eminem and Dr. Dre and all that other shit. I know that he's done some big stuff, but no, this is a fail here.
Yeah. All right. Moving along, he says, Azoff says, the stations don't seem to want to settle, Azoff said, and if the suit doesn't go his way, he may only have one recourse, and that is taking these artists off the air along with their songs. A radio music licensing cartel, that's what their behavior depicts, he says, of the current industry setup. When it smells like a cartel and acts like a cartel, in my language, that's a cartel. Mm-hmm. The Radio Music License Committee, which represents the industry's 10,000 commercial radio stations and licensing matters, has denied that characterization in a court filing. We would be comfortable with maintaining the status quo, says the RMLC Executive Director William Velez, who said that the controversy has been fueled because of rate envy over the higher streaming royalties Pandora has agreed to pay the artists. Mm-hmm. Radio stations have fought artists' efforts to collect a greater share of their sales since before World War II.
Right.
At the time, the American Society of the Composers, Authors, and Publishers, that is ASCAP, represented all the popular music played on the radio. When ASCAP announced in 1939 that it would raise its fees, broadcasters responded by creating their own performing rights organization, Broadcast Music Inc., that is BMI.
Right.
The rate paid to writers, which stood at 7.5% before the formation of BMI, now sits at around 4%. Mm-hmm. So it actually dropped.
That's great and all, but the royalties are different.
Yeah, I know.
And that's the part that's fucked up. You know, forget that the BMI is, that's great that BMI is lowered their rates and that BMI is cheaper than ASCAP. But let's look at the apples to apples comparison. Our forum, Classic Metal Show, our forum that reaches people versus their forum that reaches people. Our forum has to pay X percent of a fee, like X percent for a fee for per play. Their percent, commercial radio, has to pay based on their profitability. So what they can do is just have unprofitable stations, which they do, to kill their fee. That's how they do that. That's why you always have some fucking stray station on the lower end of the band that's a clear channel station that's playing fucking polka.
Right.
Because they can lose their fucking ass money-wise, and it cuts into the percentage.
Sure.
That's why you have that.
Yep.
It's a different, it's an unfair practice.
That is.
But, you know, okay, if Irving has the fix, then go for it.
Sure. For the past 6 decades, the rates have been governed by a special court order created under a settlement with the U.S. Department of Justice. Most artists have steered clear of a fight with the radio industry for fear of upsetting the most important promotional vehicle in the world's largest music market. Until as recently as the early 2000s, some record labels paid stations to play their songs. Mm-hmm. Even today, artists often play radio station concerts and festivals for free and are even asked to pay for at least a share of their airfare for such gigs.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to call those flyaways.
Yeah. They build $1 billion business using my music, said Steve Miller, the songwriter of classic rock favorites such as Fly Like an Eagle and The Joker. Miller, who owns the rights to his biggest hits, has always enjoyed steady play on classic rock stations, but could never make sense of the royalty checks he received.
Really? Is he making, you think he makes like $50,000 a year?
Yeah, probably isn't a whole lot of money.
No, I'll bet he's a millionaire.
Oh, yeah, he's a big multimillionaire. He's got a big, huge estate and all this kind of stuff.
Think he would have been if the radio industry hadn't played his shit for free?
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. It says that, radio was the biggest marketing tool out there for artists, and I agree with what you're saying. Would anybody know the name Steve Miller had radio never played his stuff?
No. Let's go with two bands that came out roughly the same time and are somewhat similar. And this is kind of a stretch, but let's say that Steve Miller had said, I will only have my music played if I get paid this royalty fee. And George Thorogood said, I'll put my shit on there. I don't care. Don't pay me shit. Which one of them do you think would have been bigger?
Obviously, George Thorogood.
Exactly. And that's the point. These guys, I love that this is all heritage artists that this argument doesn't matter to.
Yeah, because, again, that goes back to what I said earlier, whether they get played or not, when they come to your town, because they have that name recognition already, people are going to go see them. Yeah.
But the new band, Red Rain, this Irving Azoff thing is not going to help Red Rain 1 ounce.
Nope. Well, it might help them in 1 ounce, because if it goes the direction you said earlier, where, say Clear Channel goes out there and solicits new artists to take the place of the heritage artists that they're no longer playing, that could benefit a band like a Red Rain.
Yeah, but enrolling in this plan is what I'm saying. Enrolling with Irving Azoff, that would be death for a band.
Yeah, if they had a Irving Azoff representing them, yes, that would be death.
It would be death. They'd be done. They would be blackballed before they got started.
That is true.
Ugh, this is a terrible plan.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he's representing the artists that already are established, so they've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, he reminds me of I've been watching these Titanic things all week, and this is like the guys in first class versus the guys in steerage.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's like, yeah, this thing will be great for Jay-Z and Beyonce, but it's not going to mean shit for the fucking low bands on the totem pole that are just trying to squeak it out.
Sure.
It's going to hurt them. You're basically saying that the next 10 years of bands until they figure it all out are just fucked.
Right.
That's fucking shitty. Fuck Irving Azoff. That's what I say.
Getting back to Steve Miller, his radio paychecks stagnated even as his record sales soared in the 1970s. He says he's debated bringing a lawsuit against the stations, but didn't want to spend years in court. I wish Irving came around in 1967, Miller said. This is my first chance at transparency.
If he would have come around in 1967, no one would know you. You'd be fucking changing my oil at Jiffy Lube.
Right.
You dickhead.
BMI,
weekend.
BMI and ASCAP have also tried to raise royalty rates. BMI says its statements to artists clearly reflect all the performance, including radio plays, and that it details how it calculated royalties on its website. ASCAP Chief Executive Officer Elizabeth Matthews says its members receive granular detail about their payments, that the company has a commitment to being fair and equitable as well as fully transparent.
Fair and equitable?
Fair and equitable.
To the bands.
That's what they're saying.
How many times have we had bands on here that have told us that they haven't got paid shit in years?
Well, again, that's the bands that's supposed to collect from their label.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's the radio or BMI and ASCAP are saying, hey, we're paying the money. You know, we're sending the statements and we're paying the money. So, but it's up to the label to distribute that money.
Right. The whole thing is impossible anymore. So let's say Led Zeppelin. Okay. Let's say that Clear Channel gives Led Zeppelin 1,000 plays this week.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a right number. It's probably a low number, but let's say that they play 1,000 times this week. Now, Atlantic Records has to go and find the 3 guys that are surviving, the estate of the 4th guy, anybody that had any writing credits, anybody that had any fucking production credits, and split all this money up and distribute it to all these people.
Right.
Now let's look at a band like, we'll go with Dokken, just because that's easy. That's been on multiple labels. That's been on CMC and has been on Atlantic, and
they've been on
Elektra, Frontiers. You know, they've been on 3-4 labels.
Yeah, 3 labels that I'm aware of.
So now, anytime a Dokken song gets played, you got to figure out what label it was, plus who recorded with them, plus who the members were in that version of the band, plus who did the writing with them, plus who did the production for them, and then try to distribute to all these fucking people? Now multiply that by every band since fucking Elvis.
Yeah.
It's an impossibility to do it right. I do not believe that it is possible to pay these people correctly. Do you? Do you believe that?
It takes a lot of accounting, obviously.
Yeah, but do you think that they're doing that?
No, probably not. I'm sure it gets lost in the shuffle at some point.
Well, we know that the bands aren't seeing any money, and that's probably why. They're like, well, we fucking paid it out. Can't help it if you didn't cash your check. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
It's a stupid formula that outgrew itself, and the industry didn't adapt to it.
Right.
And now they're scrambling because they're fucking everybody, and the bands are tired of getting fucked. But you know what? It's too late. The band's waited way too long, and now they're fucked. Because now, if they would have done this 20 years ago, when there was still some sales to get, that would have been one thing. And if they would have done it 20 years ago, maybe the industry would have also evolved with the fucking technology. because they needed it to keep paying the bills. But since they didn't, the industry went to shit, and now there's no money to get. I mean, why would radio pay? Why would radio pay now when there's no money to make?
That's true.
There's no money to make off bands.
Yeah, it's too little, too late now.
Yeah, it's over. It's time for the radio to just fucking move on from this record industry, this big model, and start over with a new model.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen. And it sounds like Irving is going to be the one to push it over the edge.
Sure.
Dickhead.
Azoff said he was drawn to enter the radio fight after seeing the checks paid to artists decrease over the years. Yeah, because, radio's not a, viable thing anymore.
Right.
ASCAP and BMI would change the advance and the rates paid with little explanation, he said. One quarter, they would pay more for urban artists, and another, they'd pay more for pop artists such as Adam Levine. In recent years, classic rock artists got the short end of the stick. For classic guys, the checks were going down, Azoff said. They were getting played more and paid less. Since most songwriters can't tour, which is the primary way of making money for artists in the contemporary music business now that album sales have cratered, getting higher radio rights is the key.
Yeah, so they need to adapt because they can't do what they signed to do.
Right.
So now they need to adjust the industry to meet their inequities.
Exactly. Azoff has persuaded two radio groups, including iHeartMedia, to pay the higher fee, but most stations won't. He says GMR is girding for a legal battle with the industry. If we're dragging up rights for everyone, it certainly will help emerging writers, Azoff said. We're trying to make songwriting more valuable across the board.
But it's not.
Yeah.
Does he not see the Billboard charts? It's not valuable anymore. Writing a good song is not valuable anymore. Look at the fucking songs that are on the charts. They're not songwriting jewels anymore. It's just a bunch of repetitive horse shit.
Yeah. Well, you're not really getting many new artists anyway.
Well, not of rock, but I mean, even in like the R&B world, that it is so greatly diminished. Even, now I might as well just check in my metal card here and just admit that I listen to other shit. But, you're not getting the same songwriting level as even like 20 years ago when you had like the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or those types of bands with the Biebers and the, that style of stuff. It's a downgraded version of that stuff because for better or for worse with an NSYNC or a Backstreet Boys or whatever, because that's what's popular now is pop.
Right.
Back then they hired the top end writers to write top end songs that would be on the radio.
Yeah, sure.
And they weren't getting paid from the radio, but they were getting paid a shit ton for selling records and even more to tour. And so then you fast forward to today, Katy Perry or fucking Beyonce or whatever. They're not paying those top end writers. They're going for as cheap as possible because they're not making as much money. So they're not going to use anybody of any relevance. This is a stupid argument.
Yeah. Well, I understand it on one point, but it's just sort of a futile effort on the other hand. But I can see what Azoff is saying is that these heritage bands, these staples that get played all the time on rock radio, they're sustaining what's left of the classic rock era.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go to a different industry then. Let's just take it out of this industry to point out how ridiculous this is. How much should the electronics industry be paying the guys that were fucking Betamax repairmen that went to school to learn how to repair a Beta?
Right.
How much should they be paid?
Nothing now.
Yeah, why?
Because it's obsolete. It's obsolete, correct.
And so is music. Music has no value. Why does nobody get that music has no value anymore? It just does not have commercial value. that is what these fucking jizzbags refuse to admit. And I get why they refuse to admit it, because it's basically saying that my industry is dead, but their industry is dead. Nobody, Bon Jovi's in this as a big player, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Who the fuck has bought anything from Bon Jovi since fucking Have a Nice Day? Can you even name an album after that?
No, not at all.
You probably don't even know that one.
Bounce.
Yeah. Do you remember? Can you name 2 songs from
No,
Bounce?
I can't.
That's what I'm saying. Bon Jovi, one of the biggest players, one of the biggest touring artists in the world. His music isn't worth shit. And I'm not a huge fan of Bon Jovi or anything, but his music has no value now. If he puts out a new album next year, it has no value. How many Bon Jovi records do you think would sell? 100,000?
Maybe.
That's the point. There's no value in it anymore. Not to be paid at some premium amount. That's for damn sure. So let's take it to the radio industry. So Bon Jovi puts out a new record in 2018, okay? And he has his brand new single, Starving on the Mountain, whatever the song is called. What value do you think that song has to any radio station in this nation?
Well, not that one. Not anything that's fairly unknown. But again, this goes back to talking about the established artist and established songs, recognizable.
Well, I get that, but what I'm saying is, they're not going to accept to only get paid for Wanted Dead or Alive. They're going to want to get paid for this new fucking song. And radio has no value for that song.
Yeah, well, because then it'll never get played.
Right. So it won't get played, and what are we arguing about?
Well, the thing is that I think what Irving's going for, and, I agree with your point, is that let's just stick with classic rock. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're playing the AC/DCs and the Van Halens and the Lynyrd Skynyrd's and the Led Zeppelins and the Pink Floyds.
Right, sure.
Okay. They're selling commercials based on those songs that they play repeatedly every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, hey, you guys are making, whatever the advertisement rate is, that you're selling X amount of commercials on a daily basis off the back of these artists with these familiar tunes.
Mm-hmm.
You need to kick in a little higher rate to us, because without those tunes, you wouldn't be able to sell those commercials.
Okay.
Not new artists, but the established ones. So what they're going after is the legacy of these bands, for saying, after 40 years of being Lynyrd Skynyrd or 40 years of being AC/DC, they deserve some payback now, because you guys are still making a lot of money off the songs that people still tune in to listen to.
But they don't deserve that because they didn't sign contracts to get that.
Oh, I understand, but I'm saying from Irving's standpoint, I can see where he's going with that. Not that it'll go anywhere,
right?
But what he's doing is he's going with the stalwarts of the music industry.
Sure.
He's not representing the Red Rains of the world. He's going with the Fleetwood Macs of the world, or the Journeys of the world, or those people, because he's got nothing to lose. Because if he loses that suit, everything remains the same.
Right. He's basically squeezing the last drop of blood out of the stone.
That is true.
That's what he's doing.
That's why I said he's picking the bones.
Yeah, and what he's going to end up with is an industry that's completely fucking dead. Because once they do that, and radio will find a way to adjust. The other side of the argument that you're making right there is that radio is going to say, well, we can't fucking have an advertising budget to accommodate this, because we can't charge Bob's fucking muffler shop
exactly
4 times the amount to pay these extended royalties. If Bob's muffler shop is paying $500 for 6 spots in a week, and now you're going to raise the rates by like 4 times or something, or 8 times or whatever, Bob is not going to pay $2,000 a week. They're going to go to Bob and say, hey, the new rates are out, so we got to raise our rates. And know what Bob's going to say? Fuck that, I'm going to the internet.
Yeah.
I'll buy Google ads. It will all trickle down into the industry being dead.
Sure.
It's a mess.
Well, I think this goes back to the $15 an hour argument for people who want minimum wage to be raised to $15 an hour.
Yeah.
I think the premise that people were going by is that you need to pay that $15 an hour without raising the prices of what you have.
Yeah.
You should have less profit, but you should turn around and take a little more out of your profit to pay these people.
Yeah, and
that's what Irving's going for. Well, you guys will sell your advertising at the same rate that you're selling it, but you need to take a little more out of your profit to pay my artists.
That's not how wealthy people get wealthy.
I understand that, but I think that's the premise of it, because when a lot of these businesses that did go to the $15 an hour went out of business because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, you greedy corporations, you can afford to pay extra money without raping,
Yeah, but why should they?
Well, again, but they expect you to hold the prices the same but pay out more.
So what you're saying is this is just another liberal dick fuck.
Yeah, instead of making $18 billion in profit, you should only make $15 billion in profit and use that other $3 billion and give it back.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that they fronted $50 billion in infrastructure.
Right.
Fuck off.
And that's the attitude, though.
I know.
You shouldn't make any more.
Yeah. Redistribute your wealth.
That's really what it boils down to. That really is what it boils down to.
Yep. Stupid.
Yep.